Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I'm doing good. Everything is good here. Summer's rolled in, even in North Florida. Boy, has it rolled in. It's a crazy, it's almost like when it's winter, it's like I can't wait for summer. And when summer's here, it's like, oh my God, when is October, like early, the start of the fall coming in, that kind of thing. Spend a lot of time indoors. It's really hot and humid because, everybody knows I'm in North Florida. So yeah. I'm telling you, you become a weather wimp. But anyway, yeah. As a matter of fact, everything I need to do around the property with the animals and everything is like either really early at night or we wait till the sun's setting, like towards, because otherwise it's like you sweat a lot. And out here, Florida is known for that hot but no breeze kind of thing. So yeah. Anyway, before I forget, also I'm going to remind you again. Sign up for my newsletter you can go to miamighostchronicles.com or mppellicer.com on Substack. Because again, I have all my information there. I'm going to be putting out my third book of the Sybil Chronicles. I want to say like maybe 2 months or less, give or take. And I usually do a giveaway at the beginning when I release it. So what I do announce the giveaways usually on Amazon, a Kindle version of the book on Amazon. So plus anything else that's going on is usually on the newsletter through Substack. All right. Plus other kooky articles that I write. And like I said, links to older videos. And then I also do have more recent podcast versions of each of the show. So don't forget to sign up for that. But let's get on to the good part. And this is who the guest is tonight. This is the first time this gentleman has been on Stories of the Supernatural. His name is Bobby J. Gallo, and he's been interested in all things weird since a very young age. Modern day Renaissance man, he is a world-class professional magician who has toured the country performing for colleges, resorts, trade shows, and television audiences. He is also an avid ghost hunter, published author, speaker, networking leader, corporate trainer, web series producer, and musician. And additionally, he is co-creator and headmaster of the International Conservatory of Magic, the world's largest online school for magicians. We got to ask him about that. And I like this one. However, his most important accomplishment by far has been raising his two incredibly talented ghost hunting daughters, Nicolette and Courtney. And he's been married for over 2 decades to his wonderfully patient and beautiful wife, Renee. They reside in Castello Gallo, a haunted Italian brick castle in Roseto, Pennsylvania. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Bobby?
I am doing wonderful. How are you, Marlene? And thank you for having me on. This is really exciting.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. When I got the invite from you, I was like, ooh, this is wonderful. I can't wait to do this show.
No, I'm thrilled. Let me ask you, Bobby, what came first, the paranormal or the magic?
The magic.
The magic, right?
Okay. That's true and that's not true because the paranormal is something I've been interested in since I was a young child. And it's a passion that I've had throughout the years, even during the years I was a professional magician. And it was only until after I stopped being a professional magician that I got serious about the paranormal. But I would say that the paranormal is something that's always been part of me. I was a very strange kid, which I write about in my first book, always interested
Right.
in monsters and ghosts. And, I would read old Hans Holzer books because there wasn't really a lot of material on ghosts and spirits and hauntings when I was growing up, not like there is today.
Okay, so in other words, and it's really funny because I've spoken to certain guests of a certain age, and they don't realize that it's not like you see today that there's all these shows
Right.
about, paranormal this and do that. And a while back, it was very limited. Hans Holzer, I think, had some
That's right.
books and sightings, and they were more like they weren't really investigations. They were more like docu history, retelling
Yes.
really old ghost stories, that kind of deal. Not like what you see today. And so you got into the magic.
Right.
And let me
Yes.
ask you, because I've also heard that sometimes people that do magic, as in what we're talking about,
Mhm.
kind of are very skeptical about the paranormal because they're thinking, you know what? It's just somebody that's really good at
Yes.
what it's not for real. It's just a really good sleight of hand. How's that?
In fact, that's a wonderful
Wait, hold on.
observation.
I think I
Um,
lost you here. Why does this always happen? Hold on. Let me see.
sure.
Am I gonna have to audio? Wait, you know
Am I
what?
here? Can you hear me?
2 seconds, because I think I know what it is. Let me see. Okay, say something for me, Bobby. Let me
Hello.
switch out. Okay, no,
Are
wait, give me 2 seconds. Guys,
sure.
technical difficulties. Hold on. Every once in a while, I've noticed that with headsets that are either, yeah, here we go. For some reason, headsets that are either, you can either connect them or they're wireless. They kind of like, okay, go ahead and say something.
Okay. Are we back?
Yes, but why am I not hearing you? Wait a minute. Here we go. Go ahead, say something.
Okay. Testing. Testing.
Yep,
All
you're
right.
back.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So anyway, go ahead. It didn't make you skeptical, or what happened as far as when the paranormal and the magic cross paths?
Well, that's a very, very good observation, and it's a great question because, as people may or may not know, uh, magicians have always been opposed to the paranormal as far back as the Victorian spiritualist movement in the
Right.
late 1800s. In fact, Harry Houdini, probably the most famous name in the history of magic, devoted half of his full evening show to debunking fraudulent spiritualists. And there were also other, Neville Mascalini was another one. There were a lot of magicians who debunked the paranormal. In recent times, I guess it would be like James Randi. He was a magician who was debunking the paranormal.
Right. Yes.
But see, I took a different approach. You see, I've always been a believer, more or less, before I became a paranormal investigator. And I said, well, look, this works both ways. They were
Hmm.
using magic to debunk fraudulent spiritualists and fraudulent psychics, like they tried to debunk Uri Geller, which is
Right.
a lot of that is still out for debate whether or not he's genuine or not. I'm not even going to say that they were successful in that, but if I go on a paranormal investigation and
Hmm.
there's something happening, because of the skills that I've developed over the years as a magician, I can spot fraudulent evidence. And even today, if
Sure.
I'm watching some of these paranormal television shows, and you could ask my wife because I spoil it for her all the time, I actually see where some of them, not all of them, are falsifying evidence on these shows. So I've used that to my advantage being a magician. Now, I use it to prove the paranormal by
Right.
eliminating the fraudulent evidence. But I
Hmm.
am not out to say that the paranormal is complete nonsense like a lot of these other magicians set out to do. Like they're non believers before they even start. and there's no amount of genuine evidence that's going to get them to change their mind. I come from a completely different approach.
Well, you
So,
know what? Even Houdini,
yeah.
sometimes I got the feeling that despite him debunking, all
Hmm.
these psychics, in a way, he was also hoping he was going to come across the real thing. That's kind of the feeling I got about him. He
Well,
was
he
kind
was
of
hoping not
disappointed.
only that, he made a deal with his wife. He
Hmm.
gave her a secret code that if she can get this through one of the mediums,
Right.
that he really came through. Um, they say it never happened. Some people say it did, but it's the one thing about the paranormal and the one thing about the magician skeptics is they're never going to find that evidence they're looking for, because if anybody knows anything about paranormal investigation, intent plays a huge role.
Yes.
Um, this stuff never happens for people. Like, the ghosts aren't out to prove themselves to people. They're not trained monkeys, in a
Yes.
circus. They reveal themselves to people that have pure intentions and have honest motives. And I think that's one of the reasons my family has gotten so much evidence over the years.
Right.
Um, because
It's not an on-demand thing.
right,
Yeah.
it's
And
not
I
an
agree.
on-demand thing. I mean, sometimes it almost is. I mean, it has almost been for us but I think it's our intention. I mean, when we started doing paranormal investigation and we started our web series, you could literally count the number of paranormal web series on YouTube on one hand. You could. That's when
Mhm.
we started. In fact, April Abercrombie, who wrote the afterword to our first book, Family Spirits, and there's for
Mhm.
your viewers, there's the book right there, Family Spirits. Um, it was so novel at the time. She was like, "Wow, this is like having a fourth ghost show, ghost hunting show to watch outside of Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal State. Those three
Right, I remember those, yes.
back then, and this was about 2011.
Yes.
And so when we started doing our web series, it was really novel. People weren't doing it back then,
Mhm.
and that's how we started. But we started with the intention of getting real evidence that the whole sensationalism thing never really occurred to us. That's all you see anymore today. People really
Right.
getting sensational just to get clicks and subs and views on their
Yeah.
video platforms.
And I'm sure, Bobby, you found that you could go to some place and not every time are you going to get something conveniently to happen for the camera. Sometimes there's nothing there, and sometimes there is. It's not like you said, a trained monkey where
Right.
it's going to perform so that you produce something for your audience. And I'm sure that maybe that's when maybe you've seen things where you're like, you know what, that's somebody that's a human agency. There's nothing supernatural what just happened. But they got to hang on to their ratings. And I think sometimes that's where the problem lies between real paranormal investigations and some of these series.
I
They got to
totally agree.
produce.
I mean, I totally agree. And I say to myself all the time, are they really not getting any evidence that they have to do what they do? Because
Right.
I'll tell you, when we go out on an investigation, we always think we didn't get anything. In fact, you'll see it in
Yes.
a lot of our episodes. I'm saying to the camera, we didn't get anything. We didn't get anything. Then I go home and I do evidence review, and we got this, and we got this, and we got this, and we got this. It always seems to come after the fact, like it's happening, but you're so in the moment sometimes you don't really notice it. And I say to myself, even on these shows, are they not capturing anything? And then I say to myself, maybe they really aren't, because it goes back to the intention thing, that maybe
Hmm.
these spirits just aren't revealing themselves, because here you have this whole big camera crew coming in,
Sure.
and you have all of these producers, and you have multiple takes and shots and things like that. And if these spirits are disembodied people like we think they are, they're not stupid. They see what's going on.
Right.
And so, we come in, we're family, mother, father, two daughters. I was going to say two kids, but they're not kids anymore. They were at one time. And we have one camera, and we have honest intentions. And
Right.
so many times we ask for them to manifest, we ask for some kind of communication, and we get it. I mean, and by asking, we have gotten some mind blowing evidence that's really shocked a lot of people.
Right. But absolutely, I agree with you that when you get all these people, and that's another thing people don't realize when they see the show, there's a whole bunch of people that you don't see in front of the camera.
That's right.
They're there, you just
That's
don't
right.
see them. In the production or moving stuff around. That it contaminates. Obviously, you don't hear it in the sound, but as far as investigating, I agree with you 100%. It's like if there's anything there, it's like we're getting out of here. There's too many people running around.
Right, right.
We're gonna go into that little attic where they're not gonna go all the way up there, and we'll hang out there until they're
Yeah.
all gone.
And I tell people all the time, and yeah, I'm like everybody else. I'd like my web series to be successful, but the bottom line is, I take our handle is real, real family, real life, real ghosts. And if they want to see real paranormal evidence, watch our web series because they'll see the real stuff.
Yeah.
But we've been doing it for so long, we have so many episodes now. Some are better than others because we put the full scope out there. Again, some of them aren't that sensationalized. Some of them are actually pretty dull. There's always usually at least one thing, but I would say, but some will blow your mind. And
Right.
we've gained some kind of a following over the years. We're actually more popular in Europe than we are in the United States. We're
Isn't
actually
that funny sometimes how that happens with
it's
the audiences?
crazy. We're really actually like Family Spirits. My first book was a request from our fan base to write a behind the scenes on the web series,
Uh-huh.
and to this day it sold more copies in the UK than the United States.
Yes. And I'll tell you, even as far as the podcast for the show is very, very popular in English speaking Australia, the UK. It's incredible how much of a following the podcast version. That's really where I get really good analytics as far as like exactly because we can't sometimes we want to focus only on the US as far as an audience
Yes,
base,
I agree.
and that's not always the case. Let me ask you, how's this? Did you ever have a paranormal experience? The watershed moment where you said, "Wow, this for real. This is like even it's not even that you capture evidence or not, that inside of you, God, this is real." Did that
Yep.
ever happen to you?
Yeah, it did. In fact, as I said, I've always believed, more or less my entire life. But
Right.
it was just before we started ghost hunting that I did have an experience. And believe it or not, it wasn't on a paranormal investigation. It was through a psychic medium.
Really?
And yeah. And it was so profound that it rocked my world, to use a
Okay.
cliche. I was, my father had passed away in 1983 from pancreatic cancer. And, you know, I was having for years and years and years, almost a decade, I would have these nightmares of him as he looked just before he passed. Because
Okay.
it was a very slow death, unfortunately, and he was very emaciated. And I kept having these dreams that he looked like that, but he was still alive, walking around in that cancerous, emaciated state. It was very, very disturbing, to the point where my mother at the time said, you might want to go for counseling about this.
Right.
And I thought, okay, that might be a good idea. So I was living down south at the time. We were living in South Carolina, Fort Mill, South Carolina. And one day, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, called me and she said, Bobby, she goes, I have to tell you something. I said, what? Her name was Jill. I said, what? What do you want to tell me? She goes, I had a reading with a psychic. I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, what happened with the psychic? She goes, right in the middle of the reading, the psychic stops and says, wait a minute, somebody's coming through. Do you know a Vince? My sister-in-law goes, yeah, that's my father-in-law. He passed away in 1983. Said, yeah, he needs to get a message to somebody called Bobby. Do you know a Bobby? This is 5 states away.
Okay.
And there we go. Sorry, my screen blanked out for a minute. I think that was a sign right there.
There you
That
go.
never happened. Okay. She goes, she needs to get a message to a Bobby. She goes, that's my brother-in-law. She said, yes, tell Bobby that Vince says I don't look like that anymore. Tell him that I'm young again.
Wow.
Yeah. And No one knew about this except my mom. I was the only person I confided in about these dreams, by the way. So my sister-in-law didn't even know anything about it.
Uh-huh.
She didn't even know what that meant.
Okay.
It was that moment where I couldn't speak.
It was like, how would she know anything like
No,
that?
no, there's no way. I
Exactly.
said, there's no way this could have happened unless this was real. There's
Sure.
no way.
Exactly. It was something that was so personal that it's like, there's no
Oh,
way. No, nobody could even research this and know this.
no,
For
no.
example.
It
No.
was, I was thunderstruck, and I was that way for weeks. And then I said, you know what? I need to know more. I need to know more. That was a catalyst for me. I
Okay.
need to find out what this is all about. I need to really see if there's an afterlife. But to me, that was proof positive. In fact, that story was so, and I'm talking about it now. I didn't even write about it in my first book. I just I wrote about the whole story in my second book,
Okay.
Family Spirits 2, because we wrote two books. And I wrote that because here's the thing, that psychic medium
Uh-huh.
that relayed that message, I finally tracked her down and got her to do an interview with me in the second book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And her story is unbelievable. And she actually does work with police departments for murder investigations and things of that nature. She's the real deal. Her name
Let me
is
ask
Sylvia.
you. I have
Yeah,
to ask you, did the dream stop?
they did. They
Ah,
did.
okay.
They did indeed.
Okay.
I should have mentioned that. They stopped after that.
Wow.
And
Okay.
when I told Sylvia, I said, Sylvia, she goes, I don't do interviews. I said, no, Sylvia, you have to. And I told her the story because she was just a messenger. She didn't even know what was behind. She didn't know
Right.
the backstory behind her revelation. When
Okay.
I told her that, this was her response. Wow. She couldn't believe it herself. I said,
Okay.
Sylvia, you changed my life. I said, you have to do an interview. And she did. She did an interview with me. And that wasn't the last time I have had experiences with my father. Actually, 2 years ago, I had a near-death experience because I had my gallbladder out, and they
Okay.
missed a rogue stone, and it was blocking my bile duct, and I was going into septic shock because my bilirubin was backing up in my system, and I was
Okay.
laying on the hospital bed, and my father appeared in front of me in the hospital room, and he asked me if I was ready to go.
And you must have, oh,
No, you know what was weird about it? And I talked to this about Sylvia Rossi, and she says it's kind of natural. I wasn't surprised to see him. I was
okay.
very lethargic because I was really tired, because that's what happens when your system is poisoning itself. You almost just want to go to
Uh-huh.
sleep, and then you don't wake up. And I remember seeing him. I wasn't surprised, and I just looked at him and I said, Dad, I said, I can't go yet. My kids still need me. And he just just nodded his head, a little half smile, and he said, I understand. Turned around, and just like that, he was gone.
There you go.
It was just crazy. And I wrote about that in my second book too. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean, well, there's the long answers to your questions.
Right, right. No, no, because it and sometimes things like that happen.
Yeah,
I say the most convincing stuff I think happens exactly as you described it. Not when you're on a ghost hunt or
no,
looking for it. How's that?
right.
That something comes across unexpectedly, and there's no way. Yeah, nobody could produce this. This wasn't like you said somebody looked up or knew about it and gave me the answer. That kind of deal.
No, no, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing. Um, exactly. But those are the most powerful things. I mean, we've got some great stuff on our investigations. I mean, things that we have a couple pieces of evidence. I would say maybe 10. Over our decade-long series of investigations that are undeniable.
Okay.
There's no way they can be anything but paranormal activity.
Okay.
One is an EVP, believe it or not, but it was caught in such a way. Again, this was caught by accident.
Okay.
My wife and I were leaving an old cemetery that I stumbled upon. No one has ever investigated. It turns out to this day, the most haunted location we've ever investigated. It's called Old Unity Cemetery, Fort Mill, South Carolina, Revolutionary War era.
Mm-hmm.
only about a half an acre total. But we were testing a new piece of equipment. We weren't getting any activity at all. And I
Okay.
had my EVP recorder running. So we said, okay, it's a wrap. Let's just go home. So I forgot to turn my EVP recorder off, and I
Okay.
had it in my pocket. And when I got home, I realized I didn't turn it off. And I looked and I said, oh, I can't believe I didn't do that. Okay, let me download the file, put it in Audacity. Let's review this
Mm-hmm.
thing. I'm reviewing it and I'm laughing as my wife and I are trying to get out of the cemetery because the sun had gone down and we're trying not to trip over footstones. And my wife is very
Mm-hmm.
superstitious. She wants to walk in between the graves and not, over them.
Right.
And all of a sudden, a third voice comes in out of nowhere. It's a female voice, and it says two complete sentences. It says, come back. And then 5 seconds later, don't leave now.
Oh.
And I sat there at the computer. I was speechless. I said,
Okay.
Renee, you got to come up here right now and listen to this. And to this day, people listen to that and they say, that is the EVP every paranormal researcher wishes they could get. Because, first of all, it's relevant. We're leaving the
Mm-hmm.
cemetery and something's telling us
Sure.
not to leave. It's clearly a female voice. It's saying two complete sentences so clearly you can hear the enunciation of the words, but very wispy and ethereal. It's very haunting. People that listen to it can't sleep for a week. But that to me is undeniable. There's
I
just
take it you
no
went back to that cemetery, right?
many times. We found out that the spirit's name we believe is Nancy. We've located her grave, and she's done a lot of things for us when we've asked her to do them
Really?
while we were there. Very active. Um, that's one. The other one was a full body apparition that my daughter Nikki G caught. We were in a small privately owned cemetery, also in Fort Mill, South Carolina, but it was on private plantation. So nobody
Mm-hmm.
could investigate it, but it had this incredible reputation. So I went to the plantation house and knocked on the door. Elegant woman answers the door. And I told her who I was. And I said, my family's over there in the car. I told her, could we have permission to investigate tonight your burial plot? We promised to be respectful. We won't touch anything. She goes, sure, absolutely. And she proceeded to tell me her family history and that the man that said to haunt it is a Revolutionary War hero called Thomas Sprott. So anyway, my wife is using the dowsing rods and she's getting some really good communication. And my daughter, Nikki G, she's using an infrared camera and she's taking shots. All of a sudden, I ask, would you mind posing for a picture? And through the dowsing rods, the entity said yes. Okay, I said, Nikki, start taking pictures. Well, lo and behold, as she's taking pictures, something starts manifesting that we can't see, but she can see through the infrared viewfinder. I'm going to actually show your audience what she
Okay,
saw
yes.
because it started out as an ectoplasm cloud in front of my wife. And then you could actually see it sucking the energy out of her EVP recorder, we suspect, to get enough energy to form into a full body apparition.
Okay.
And here we go. So first I'm going to show you, this is where nothing happened. That's nothing right there.
Wait a minute. Let me see if I can get you
Sure.
a bigger picture. Oh, come on.
This is from my book, Family Spirits, the first edition.
This is the first one, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we can.
That's not too bad.
Hold on.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
That's nice. So there's nothing here. Nothing's happening here.
Right.
This is the next shot.
Wow.
Oh, wait till you see the last one. Now, if you look closely, I'm going to get this still, and look at the EVP recorder my wife is holding. You'll see a stream of energy coming out of it.
Yes, I can see that.
You see
I
that?
can see that. Yep.
Now, my daughter's going, Dad, you got to see what's happening. And I'm trying to be Mr. Professional saying, no, honey, we'll do evidence review later. She's like, no, you got to see this right now. This is what it turned into. Are you ready for this one?
Let's see it. What? Oh,
That's my
God.
back on the left, which is my better side.
Uh-huh.
Right next to me is the full body apparition.
That's incredible.
Now, in the foreground, you can see my wife.
Yes. Uh-huh.
This right here. I can't, get right there.
Yeah, no, that's
And you can see the head, the cloak.
yeah, I was gonna say it looks like sometimes that's exactly what I was thinking. That looks like either a cloak or something or
Yeah. Look, it could be a 1700s era cloak.
yes. Yes.
And I've had that picture examined by many people. Everybody says one of the most impressive full body apparitions they've ever seen. And
And did you ever find out anything about was that the soldier you think that
mhm,
the owner was telling you about?
yes, Thomas Sprott. Yes, he was.
Okay.
Actually, he was a pretty prominent figure in the Revolutionary War. He allied with the Catawba Indians to stop Lord Cornwallis's march toward Charlotte. And
Okay.
in return, he helped the Catawba defend themselves against the Shawnee because there was a very bitter battle between the Catawba and the Shawnee.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, the very next day during the daytime, we went back, just my wife and I, because they said there was an old fort in the woods near that area,
Okay.
and we contacted him again, and he led us to the fort. And it was crazy. And you can watch this on video. I'm holding an EMF detector, and she's using dowsing rods, and it's pointing us down through the woods to this spot, while the EMF signature is tracing exactly where the dowsing rods are going.
Wow.
Yeah, so I call it, the episode is Ghost Guide, but you got to watch the Hidden Grave of Thomas Sprott first, because that's the one where you'll see, and you'll see all the communications and everything that happened. I mean, there's some other and crazy things that happened during that investigation.
Right. And I've noticed that sometimes in certain rural settings you will find, like you said, these smaller cemeteries.
Yes, without a
Um,
doubt, without a
you
doubt.
turn and they're right there. There's a bunch of graves right there from even if it's not a family, it's from the people in that area, in that community,
Yes,
even if they've dispersed. And sometimes I think also what happens around it is, especially some places where, let's say, the Civil War, Revolutionary War, you get sometimes even battles that are never found in a history book. All
right,
right.
exactly.
And you'll come across things that you're like, where did this come from? But yeah, not everything is documented. In other words, as far as battles or conflicts, things like
Right.
that. Yeah, sometimes it's happenstance where you're like, and like you said, sometimes you'll get figures that, yeah, like let's say certain soldiers or generals or, well, commanders that they're referenced. But again, sometimes not everyone made the history books.
No, that's true. That's true. And I just want to tell anybody, like, I'm sure a lot of paranormal investigators watch this podcast. That cemetery has since been fenced off because of
Yeah,
us, I think. Because once that evidence got out, I think they were getting visited without
sure.
permission. So
Yeah.
now if you go there,
Unfortunately, yeah,
you're
that
not getting in.
happens.
Just saying.
That happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
does.
it and people, I hate to say it, not everybody would do like what you did, which is ask for
You
permission.
have to
And
do that.
yes, of
Yeah,
course, absolutely. If you're talking private property, people, you can get arrested. I don't care. You can
absolutely.
tell I'm here to do a ghost hunt. You're still trespassing. Come along. We're getting arrested for trespassing or something. Doesn't matter
Exactly.
what. You don't have to
Exactly.
be not committing a crime to be doing trespassing. So yeah, absolutely. When in doubt, and I've come across plots of land that you're really not sure if it's private property or not, but sometimes you have to assume that it is because
Yeah.
it is,
No, I,
you
I
know,
agree. I agree.
just
And
because
just
it's not
because it's a
fenced in.
cemetery doesn't necessarily mean it's public access, because a lot of
Right.
cemeteries in a lot of states say, well, if that's a historic thing, so that's public access. But if it's a family burial plot, it's not. So there's a distinction there. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I want to say also because of the thing for the last few years with the shows and so many
Hmm.
people going to cemeteries, places that before would never close their gates, now they are closing gates.
Yep.
They're very aware of if there's anybody inside a cemetery. And I really think it's not so much somebody doing an investigation, it's vandalism. That's what they're worried about.
I agree. Because
So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a shame. It really is. It really is a
yeah.
shame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do find that. So yeah, one time I was in one over here in Florida. There's a spiritualist community out here called Casadega.
I'm very familiar.
Okay, and just right north of it, they have a cemetery for the community that was there from the beginning. God, I
Oh,
can't remember the
wow.
name. It was Marlene, but Casadega in and of itself is really small, but they already had a community that was there, outside the spiritualist camp. And I remember one time I was there in the middle of the afternoon. As a matter of fact, and I remember there was a lady across the street, way on the other side, because I was on the edge, and she's giving me the stink eye. And it was the middle of the day, and it was like, next thing I know, and it was the middle of the day. The gates were open. I wasn't doing anything. I was just like, we were like walking around looking at. Next thing I know, there's a police cruiser coming through, and he just looked at me, and I waved at him, and he waved back at me, and it's like, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm just
Right.
walking around.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, a spiritualist cemetery, I mean, how
Well,
can,
no, this is. I don't know if it because when they set up Casadega,
mhm.
this predated the cemetery, predated the camp. It was from the
Okay,
people that lived in
okay,
the area to begin with.
I see.
I'm not sure. I do believe some of the maybe some of the spiritualists did end up buried there. Like we went one time, there was a very short masonry fence around. It was probably some type of family plot,
Mhm.
and somebody had left like 2 cups of clear water right there on top of the walls. Okay. And in some circles, especially spiritualism, that's like to elevate the spirits. And let's face it, you don't go into the middle of a cemetery and you find 2 glasses of
No, no.
clear water sitting on some fences. So yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Getting back to the original point, if you're ever gonna do something like that, make sure you get permission. At the very least, go to the police department and tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna be over there. This is who we are."
Right.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things that comes with modern day ghost hunting. Is you gotta like you don't want to get like arrested or anything like that. Or
No,
in some
no.
cases, have you ever come across? I talk about it one time. Sometimes you go into some of these places and you can run into squatters or people, your live people. How's that?
Oh, don't I know it? That almost happened to me recently. Not
What
recently,
happened?
but probably 2 years ago. I was doing I was doing I did an investigation up in Connecticut, and it was the
Uh-huh.
Norotan burial ground, and it was this beautiful. Oh my gosh, it was the most breathtaking New England Revolutionary War era cemetery that I had ever seen, and it was massive. But it was all older, small headstones, but as far as the eye can see. And I did an investigation alone because I was up there on business. And I had the spirit. It was just like just leading me around through the cemetery, and I had some equipment that was showing that that's exactly what it was doing. And I never really got a good sense of what it was trying to communicate with me. So I went back like 2 years later because I was up there again, and they had had this huge storm, and the trees were toppled, and a lot of the stones were smashed, and some of the trees uprooted the graves. I mean, it was horrible. It was just horrible,
Okay.
horrible scene. And I walk in there, and I'm walking around, and I actually filmed it so people
Mm-hmm.
could actually see what happened. They could see the devastation. It's called Devastation at Nerone. But what did I see when I was in there? I saw squatter camps inside this. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, like with the sleeping bag. They weren't there, but they were
Right.
sleeping there at night. And
Right.
and it was odd because it was just right outside of Stamford, Connecticut, and
Okay.
I didn't really think that that area would have
Right.
doing that, but they did apparently. Um, but I got out of there because you don't want to run into those. You don't
No, no. People don't realize
right.
some of these.
People in a state
Sometimes
of
you'll get people who
desperation
are very
when you're
secretive or they're very how's this territorial? How's that?
right. Well, they're
And
people in a state of desperation, and
yeah,
people in
sure.
a state of desperation, they're unpredictable.
Right, exactly. Or the last thing is like, "Oh, you're filming us?" One of those deals. You're taking pictures of us, guy. Yes.
Right.
People, it could get crazy. As a matter of fact, recently, I'm gonna segue real quick off this. I found out about this. I didn't know back. I want to say in the 2011. up in Oregon, in this area on I guess I want to say it's the outskirts of Portland. You know that they did a lot of logging.
Hmm.
One time they found a dad as a matter of fact, they did a series based on it. The father and the daughter, 12 years old, living out there in the woods, and they have been living out there for 4 years.
Wow.
The guy was a Vietnam vet, okay, and he tells the police, the mother of the child's been institutionalized. This is my daughter, okay. He only had like a $400 pension kind of deal, and they have been living out there. They had like a little lean-to, that a vegetable garden. Because they said that they were off trail, really off trail. But I guess there's people now that go off trail when they go hiking and
Mhm.
saw them and told and of course people are thinking something, something's odd. There's a man with a young girl out there.
Sure.
So finally they were able to track him down, and this was his daughter. She was perfectly fine, healthy, both of them. They were right next to a creek, and what he was doing is when they would go like twice a week into town for like little, stuff to eat, and he had gotten old encyclopedias, and he was teaching her. He says the girl was not illiterate, on the contrary, she was well read.
Wow.
And everything. And for 4 years, I was like, what? And they had not been found. They had not been seen for that length of time. And then eventually somebody tried to help them out after they got checked out and at some place like a farm. And then one day he said, no, he thanked the people that were letting him stay on the horse farm. He says, no. And they left.
Crazy.
But they have been out there for 4. And I was thinking Oregon, that gets really cold out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the ability, sometimes people think we're so used to our comforts that people can't live out there. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. As a matter of fact, somebody that was saying that when they accompanied them, a reporter, the second time, he says everybody else, because is going like having a hard time trekking. Like, I guess it was kind of a little bit steep. He says that they're both going down like nothing. They're like walking all over the place without a problem. And getting to that, as far as, can you imagine somebody goes into some type of scenario where they could easily be mistaken? I heard a twig snap. I saw movement. It's the ghost. No, it's not the ghost. It's somebody
we
that's
debunk a lot of stuff. Just to let everybody know, we do debunk a lot of things.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. Oh my gosh, I do.
It's like, we're not going to stick around to find out what that is. It's the ghost. Everybody just, I'm not talking about investigating, but sometimes you get places that get this reputation for being haunted. It's like, not
well,
really.
And that dovetails into so many things. Like, it's like these people that post these pictures on Facebook and they say, do you see it? And they circle this area.
Yes.
And you look at it for a half hour and you can't see a thing.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, there's nothing there.
Right. And that's one of the things I say, contrary to what a lot of people think, the paranormal investigators will just take anything. On the contrary,
No.
It's harder the standard is higher. And I agree. I've seen pictures exactly like what you're describing. And I'm like, okay, if I look at it this way, that way, this way, it's like, no, that's just nothing. It's just nothing. It's just shadow. No, I know exactly what you mean. That's just a blob with a red circle around it.
That's all it is.
Yeah. That's happened. As far as proof has got to be, and people could say it's unfair, but it is what it is because of the nature of paranormal investigations. Now, if you're going to put something out as proof, it better be clear, or like you just showed right there in your book.
Right.
That's like, okay, how do you explain that? That kind of proof. It has to be something like that.
Right.
Because you're going to get your detractors. Something, and I'm glad the other day, and I had never heard of this, by the way. A couple of months ago, I was reading an article where they said that Houdini was, I don't want to say killed, but set up by not by the spiritualists, by the psychics. Like, in other words, he was busting up too many psychics, and that basically they did him in. You haven't heard that?
No.
And I was like, I hadn't heard it either, but I was like, well, that's not far-fetched either. I mean, you're busting up their rent money.
Well, and to be fair, I think a lot of spirituals were getting a bad rap because
Yeah,
knowing what I know about psychics and knowing the genuine
yeah,
psychics that I know, then it only stands to reason that there were genuine ones back then too.
sure. There
And
was.
they were lumping everybody into this one basket that says what you're doing is BS. And
Hmm.
we are going to show magic tricks that duplicate what you do during a
Right,
seance. And we're going to say that because we can duplicate it, that means what you're doing is false. And they do that today with paranormal evidence. A lot of these skeptics will duplicate evidence because, like that full body apparition that I just showed you, that could
right.
be duplicated with Photoshop.
Hmm.
Um, somebody could somebody good at Photoshop could probably duplicate that, but that doesn't mean that that picture is false. That
Exactly.
picture is genuine, even though you were able to duplicate it. And that's why it's very hard. I mean, photographic evidence is getting harder and harder to present because
Sure.
even for me, unless I know who took it, I don't know. Some of this stuff is really convincing that
The
they could
first
fake
thing they're gonna be is like, "Well, exactly what you just said. Well, you could Photoshop that."
it. Yeah,
But you know what? Getting back to these psychics, and this is my theory again, I think, yeah, some of them were out and out like charlatans. I
for sure.
agree. But I think some of them were, but being a psychic, like that you're supposed to like just like the supernatural, do it on demand. I think that the psychic ability, especially manifestation of ghost or that you're gonna
Hmm.
they couldn't always do that, produce it. But when you're paying your bills, you have better and you had a paying customer. What are you gonna tell them? Hey, today I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling good, or I'm tired, or I'm not
Yeah,
psychic today that much. People paid and they wanted to see, something. And
yeah,
I
and
think that's
that's
where a lot of them fell into the producing
yeah,
some of the things that they did, because they were like and back then it was like you would see these things with the tambourines flying around, and they had to produce the ectoplasm and things like that. It was like kind of like a show kind of
well, it's
deal.
it's funny because there's a medium that I know, and I was actually on her show as well. Her
Hmm.
name is Dr. Christina Rawls, and she's got a real doctorate, and she very intelligent woman, and she's a trance medium, and
Okay.
that all happens in that arena of trance mediumship.
Hmm.
And she's seen ectoplasm, and she's seen transfigurations. It's happened to her, and she's gotten video of it. I mean, she's pretty incredible. So it does happen, but there are different types of mediums that could do different types of things.
Right.
And so I don't rule it out because once
Right.
I know somebody that I trust and I know that they're doing it, I'm like, that makes me start to think,
Right.
that maybe there is something to this. So I can never discount anything. I mean, we are really working and ectoplasm, like, we get these ectoplasm clouds on film, and what you saw in the book wasn't the first time that we've gotten ectoplasm on film. And so it's like this stuff is coming from somewhere, and this stuff does exist because we're
Sure.
photographing it. You just can't see it with the naked eye. You can see it with IR. You just can't see it with the naked eye because the human spectrum of vision is very limited. If
Exactly.
one day we could have the eyes of an eagle, we would never look at the world the same again
Oh,
because they can,
absolutely not.
right? Or an owl, they could see things that we couldn't even dream. If we have the ears of a dog for one day,
Yeah.
it would be the same thing, or the nose of a dog. What we have as humans is intellect. That's where we shine. That's why we're the top of the food chain because of
Yeah.
what we have between our ears.
Exactly.
But all of our other senses are pretty much inferior to almost every other species on the planet.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
How does a robin land on the ground and know where the earthworms are beneath the soil?
Yeah.
There's some kind of sense there that
Yeah,
tells them where they
exactly.
are that we can
Wow,
only
right, right. Like, how do these birds that do migrations or other animals
perfect,
that they use the magnetic poles for
perfect,
migration, for routes?
exactly, exactly.
Y
So these things exist. We just can't see them, which is why I always tell skeptics, just because you can't see something, how could you say your senses are so limited? You're so finite. I mean, even the colors we see is nothing compared to the color spectrum that actually exists.
Of course, yeah.
You know,
That that's beyond, one time this is because I have chickens. And I said, I wonder, can chickens see colors? And I read, one of those things that you kind of look and you find out that birds in and of themselves, how much more color they can pick up. Let's say not red, they can see so many versions of, let's say, red, of the color red or any other color.
and here's something where the paranormal dovetails with this whole thing that we're talking about. In NDEs, near death experiences, when people
Mhm.
go to the other side and come back, the first thing that most all of them say, other than the tunnel of light,
Right.
is that they were in a place where the colors were so vivid they couldn't believe it, and they saw colors they never saw before.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
say, and that's very common. So when you break out of this mortal coil and your spirit moves on, the evidence is you're going to be able to see these things that we only speculate on now.
Right. Exactly. That you're limited to because just our makeup. It is what it is.
Right.
Let me ask you something, Bobby. Have you ever been to a place to do an investigation that you felt we got to leave?
Yep. Yep.
What
Um,
happened?
and it's funny because our second investigation was one of our most frightening, believe it or not. And I think for most people, they never would have investigated again. Um, through an EMF detector, we were told in no uncertain terms to get out of the cemetery.
Okay, you got
Uh,
that get out thing.
we didn't hear anything,
No,
but
I'm just kidding. But that's that
yeah, yeah. Well, what happened is,
prototypical.
first of all, here's one thing. When we're investigating, we're all pretty intuitive. You can feel the energy of a place when you go into. You
Yes,
can almost know it's haunted before anything even happens because you feel it.
yes.
And we were in the cemetery and we felt it, and it was very oppressive. We all felt it. And once we got a communication going through our EMF detector, ping the needle once for yes, two for no. Um, the one, we were asking these questions, and finally I said, "Do you want us to leave?" And the thing almost jumped out of my hand.
Oh,
And my youngest at the time got freaked out because she knew it. And we left. And that car ride was so quiet on the way home. And the second time, it was an episode that we released called The Gatekeeper. And it was the same thing, very oppressive. And my oldest, who is very empathic, was doing an obelisk session. And it
okay.
was referring to a friend of hers that just committed suicide.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
wow.
very very emotional. And again, it was they told us to get out of the cemetery, and it kept draining our equipment. Every time we would pull out a piece of equipment, the battery would drain because it wanted us to leave.
Right.
And it happened so many times that we ended up doing the video on our cell phones because our video camera was dead. I had done some post investigative research on that cemetery after that happened because I wanted to know why. It didn't look like it would have been that kind of a cemetery, but I
Right.
found out through old newspaper clippings that there were voodoo rituals being done there.
Oh man, you got ahead of me. You got ahead of me on
Yep,
that.
yep,
Okay. You found out later that whoop, yep, yep. And that's one of the things I tell people because, living in South Florida, I saw a lot of that.
I'm
Okay.
sure. Yes,
That, and by the way, everybody thinks just of the voodoo or voodoo like, cult or religions or whatever you want to call them, beliefs do that. But you'd be surprised. There's a lot of different subcategories of religions, that have that kind of occultism that
sure,
do use stuff that you find in a cemetery,
right.
whether it's just dirt but yes, people don't realize that a lot of times, not only do they go in there to collect dirt or sometimes bones or just whatever, they leave a lot of stuff there. Okay, as
They
far as
do.
the
Well, yeah,
settlement.
and that's what the newspaper article said, that there were like dead chickens and things like that. I
Yeah,
honestly think that it wasn't an evil spirit that we were dealing with. I think it
right.
was guardian spirits
Sure,
at that cemetery that didn't want this to happen again.
sure.
And I mean, here you got these people coming in with all these electronic gadgets and everything. They're obviously
Sure.
not visiting a relative, so let's get them out of here. Based upon what we've already experienced.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people don't realize that there's an attraction. 'Cause, again, let's go back to the thing of the paranormal shows because it became, like let's go to the cemetery, and you would think, well, okay, even once upon a time, cemeteries were like parks. People would stroll through them. Once upon a
Right.
time, that's why the older ones. But in some cases, some of these they've left stuff there besides dead chickens, spell work,
Yep.
really weird occult stuff that you will find in these cemeteries that I want to say like how's this? It's not because it's an entity in and of itself, but what it holds the energy of the whatever they left there is on the negative side. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So that's why you have to be careful sometimes when you go to some of these cemeteries. I've found stuff I've I remember one time I was in a thing where they had the raised tombs, where they're like even
Mausoleum.
though they didn't have to bury them below above ground, but they did. And I'm looking all of a sudden between two big like vaults, really is what they were. I'm seeing a bundle wrapped up in something.
Oh
And I
boy.
was like, nah, I'm not gonna find out what that is. I'm just gonna
Nope.
leave that right there. And
I
I
agree.
walked away. I mean, I've seen a lot of other disturbing stuff, but yeah. My point being that it doesn't always have to be like a dead animal or something. It could just be a handkerchief or something tied up, left
I
there.
experienced a haunted teddy bear.
Really?
I
Yeah.
did, and
What
I
happened
didn't
with
touch
that?
it. I didn't touch it, but I said it's so peculiar because what was strange about the haunted teddy bear is it was in one of those same type of cemetery that was in the middle of the woods, and it was very, very,
Uh-huh.
very old. So why is there a teddy bear here? And it was
Okay.
the teddy bear was old, but of course it wasn't as old as the cemetery because it would have completely disintegrated. But when I put my EMF detector down next to it, the needle pinned, and I
Ooh.
said, "Okay, I'm not touching this thing."
Yeah.
In fact, I think
Yes.
I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like because see, this is the thing. Sometimes people don't realize. Sometimes people that are working in stuff that's on the darker side,
Right.
they kind of like leave. It's almost like when you how's this? I'm trying to think of a good the byproducts, they recognize it's not good. They're not going to leave it in their house.
Right.
It's almost like when you eat fish, and you scale it and you throw away the leftovers or the scales or the guts or whatever because you don't want it to stink up your kitchen.
Right.
It kind of they dispose of it. They don't leave it where they're at. All right. And that sometimes is where you get exactly like what you just described. It's just a teddy bear. Just to look at it, you think, okay, it's a teddy bear. But you're getting a really weird reading because
Oh, yeah. Um, Mystery at Rockport is the episode if somebody wants to see the
okay.
haunted teddy bear.
Exactly, exactly,
No,
exactly.
I'm
And you see
sorry. Mystery at Blackstock. Rockport
oh,
was another one.
Blackstock, okay.
Mystery at
And
Blackstock.
have you let me ask you now that you got that, have you ever, I don't want to say taken, have you ever been on an investigation and then something followed you home or stuff started happening at home and you're like, oh,
Oh, I want to answer this and I don't want to answer this because yes,
uh,
the short answer is yes,
okay,
and it was something that I didn't write about in either of my books.
okay,
It required some outside help
really?
to alleviate, and it stopped us investigating for a few years.
That bad?
That bad.
That speaks volumes right there.
Yeah, and it was pretty bad. It was at the height of the activity. Things were moving around in the house. We had the smell of sewage. It was the whole negative, like every textbook
Negative.
negative. And
Eh,
finally, I called.
the cavalry?
Well, we got two things. We got two people involved. I got
Okay,
a priest involved, and I got an exorcist involved. And both of
okay.
them said, yeah, for sure.
So let me and you knew it was after what, a certain cemetery or an investigation or where had you guys gone?
I can't really pinpoint it
Okay.
because it could have been. We were doing
Mhm.
so many at that time.
Right. Okay.
We could have picked it up at any one of them. I will tell you this though, for
Okay.
sure. This is just I don't want to freak anybody out who uses dowsing rods because so many people use them. But the dowsing rods had the attachment, and
Really?
yeah, and it was on a hunch because my wife
Okay.
used them so much. I picked them up and I took my EMF detector and I put it in.
Really?
Yeah, like you wouldn't believe it. I got those things out of my house so fast that
That's
yeah,
so interesting.
yeah.
That is so interesting.
Because they're copper, they
Hmm.
do they do absorb energy. They're a conductor.
Yes,
You
they
know,
are. They
copper is
are.
a conductor, conducts energy. We're
Yes.
talking electromagnetic energy here, and these are
Hmm.
copper dowsing rods, and something got
Hmm.
onto them and did not leave. And but it was bad. I mean, and we all experienced it. This isn't like no one's imagination. It wasn't just me. It was my wife, my two daughters. Everybody experienced it. It was bad,
Okay.
and it latched onto one of us in particular. But
Okay.
I don't really want to go into that
Right.
because
So it got a target. In other words, it targeted somebody,
yeah,
and
one of us was targeted. So yeah, so there's the answer to your question. I don't want to freak people out, but it does happen.
no, but it does. It does.
Yeah,
People don't realize that can happen because and that's incredible, that thing with the dowsing rods. But yeah, it's something that, and I tell somebody sometimes there might be, how can I say it? There might be somebody in the group that there's an affinity for. One of two things, this is what I tell them. If you're in a team, sometimes you go in there and you're tired, or you're coming down with a cold, or there's when you're like, just like when your defenses are down, that you might catch a cold, almost like, or let's say you're stressed out. Let's say stuff is going, you might be the weak link that might cause you to be targeted. Or sometimes it's just an affinity between you and what's there. You
right.
look like somebody they knew. We're talking here human spirit, not non-human. There's something about that one person, okay, that draws them in. Or, you always get the person that's really highly psychic.
I
That
think well, we're I think I'm the least intuitive
okay.
out of the four of us. My wife and
Okay.
my two girls are incredibly talented, unbelievably psychic. But here's the thing: I think, and I agree with everything you just said, by the way. But I think in our case is
Okay.
because at the time we weren't taking enough precautions.
Okay.
Again, this was when the field was very young,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
really didn't know the risks. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Today we take a lot more spiritual precaution before we do
Yes.
this.
Right.
Um, we were opening ourselves up a lot,
Yeah.
and you really shouldn't do that, but we didn't know any better at the time.
Right.
So that's what happens. And
Yes.
if you're not careful, something does sneak through.
Yep.
And I think today it's kind of unlikely. There's certain things we won't do anymore. My wife won't touch another set of dowsing rods.
I don't blame her.
And if you watch our early shows where she uses the dowsing rod, people are blown away because this woman doesn't move a muscle, and those things
Okay.
react on command. She was so talented with them, but she won't do them. She won't pick up another set because they are like Ouija boards and pendulums.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're just
Conduit
slower
voltage,
because it's yes or no, but yeah. Or it's like, yeah, it's a slower method, but
right? They're
they're
conduit
very good. I
voltage.
have a pair right there sitting on a bag right there, and I haven't used them in a while, but I know exactly what you mean. That
Right.
yeah, they're basically an instrument for communicating with the other side. I mean, everybody
It's
thinks
the
of
way they
dowsing as, I'm
work.
not trying to find a well. You could use it
Right.
for other things.
Well, the spirit works through you to move them, and
Yeah.
that's where the risk is. Because if
Sure.
you're communicating with an EMF detector, it's communicating directly with the EMF detector. If you have an obelisk,
Yes.
it's picking a word out of the obelisk. It's bypassing you. But with those three things that I mentioned, and I do the pendulum. Okay, full
Yeah.
disclosure.
Hmm.
When you're doing pendulum, dowsing rod, Ouija board, you're the conduit,
Sure.
and that's why they're used in seances.
Yes.
uh, because that's the way they function. And that's also where there's a little bit of risk. I'm not telling people not to do it. I'm just
Well,
telling you that's what got us into trouble.
and also people don't realize that when when somebody's done darker practices,
Right,
sometimes, what they leave sometimes there is also discarnate spirits that they've used for something,
right,
but they bind them in such a way that they can not leave the cemetery. In other words, they use them, but they don't want this spirit to go back to the originator. So what happens is that they hitchhike. They can't leave on their own. If somebody puts some type of how can I say, a barrier for
Right.
them to leave, but they'll hitchhike like on a living person, like or
I agree.
or on something like you said is the dowsing rod.
Yes,
Sometimes
that's the dowsing
when
rod.
people you know how people leave like little things sometimes in the graves and stuff.
Yep.
There's people that will take them. Oh, I'm gonna take
Don't
this little
ever take anything
statue.
home.
No.
Cardinal rules of investigations, folks.
Yes.
Whoever's listening to this, do not take anything home from an
Yep.
investigation. The only things you get to take home is your evidence and your experience.
And that's it.
That's it.
And that's it.
By the way,
And it
there's
doesn't
the
even matter if it's an old.
that's the
Wow.
haunted teddy bear.
Look at that. Oh, you know, that's a very good question. What is that teddy bear doing there?
If you saw the cemetery, you'd wonder that too, because this wasn't a modern cemetery by any stretch of the imagination.
Right, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
what would anybody be doing out there leaving
It's a very good question.
But yeah, they'll hitchhike. Like you're my ride out of this place.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So there's a lot. You know, sometimes there's more to the place than. You know, when you go to cemeteries, a lot of them they're nice and quiet. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with everything you said, Bobby. That you got to be careful and know what you're doing. How's that?
Yeah. In fact, I'm so adamant about what I believe is that in my second book, Family Spirits 2, I at the end of the book, I talk about everything. I talk about all this stuff because this book is a little bit different than the first book. First book is basically a compilation of all of our investigations up to that point.
Okay.
And it's a big book. It's almost 300 pages.
Yeah, I see that.
And this book is I could never write this book again. But the second book I have an ordained exorcist, very good friend of mine who's going to be on the Travel Channel next month, the Legion of Exorcists, Reverend Sean Whittington. He's actually in this book.
Oh my God! Yes, you know that Sean wrote the foreword to one of my books.
Oh, we have something in common. I love him.
Yes,
we're very good friends.
Yes, he's really really good. He's got his own experiences himself.
You're going to be seeing him reenacted in this new show.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just finding Sean's picture in here because I got Sean's picture in here for anybody. So Legion of Exorcists. So I'm giving his show a plug. But there's Sean.
Yeah, there's Sean. Yes,
he's in my book. I got Brian Cano in here from Haunted Collector. I got an Archbishop in here. Sylvia Rossi, the medium I was speaking about, is in here. And
who's the Archbishop? Ronald Fail?
Christina Rake.
Okay.
She's an Archbishop for the American Old Catholic Church.
Yes.
She is an advocate for paranormal studies, and she has written a great book on it, where she debunks all of the. There's a lot of fundamentalists out there that say that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, that all ghosts are demons and things like that. She refutes all of that in her book.
Right.
And so I did a great interview with her. She's absolutely brilliant. And I have a Hollywood actor in here turned paranormal investigator, Kevin Kincaid. He plays the bad guy in a lot of Hollywood movies. So it's great. It's a cool read.
But yeah, and you know what? And the thing is though that so this show's coming out on the Travel Channel. I don't know. I haven't
in June. In
June. Okay.
They actually have a guy playing Reverend Sean, which I think is so cool.
Because they do one of those where they have the person, they interview them, and then they do the story with a different.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know who's producing this? I was shocked. Eli Roth. If you know anything about Eli Roth, he makes the most disgusting horror movies you've ever seen.
Yes.
But yet, here's why sometimes somebody like this has a calling to do something really, really good. Because this show is going to wake a lot of people up, I guarantee you.
Well, you know what? This is the thing. As a matter of fact, I'm a very good reader, but I just recently did I heard the book. How's that? An Audible. You know that there is, he's still alive, a Dr. Gallagher, who is a psychiatrist who he now he's older, much older, but for many years he was basically brought into the exorcism field because they asked him, priest would ask him originally, could you please assess this person for psychiatric problems? Somebody that they
Right.
thought was, and he was strictly a very scientific, he's a psychiatrist. He's like, so he was like, okay, this, in other words, this was basically only psychiatric assessment. How's that? That was his entry into that world many, many years ago. And he finished releasing a book, I want to say last 2 or 3 years, that he talks about, how at the beginning, how he got introduced to it and how he finally got convinced after being in that field.
Yes. And that could be something similar. By the way, I shouldn't have said disgusting horror movies. I should have said graphic.
No, they are.
Mr. Roth, if you're watching
what it is.
Mr. Roth, if you're watching this, I'm still available. I'm just saying.
It's like, okay.
You never know.
Yeah, it's how can I say it? Coming, obviously, he was never like an exorcist himself. All he would ever do was, after a while, he was very trusted by the exorcists, and of course, in the book, he doesn't give most of the priests that he worked with are already passed away because he was younger than them when he got. But he became convinced of things that he saw. As much as he wanted to remain a, I don't want to say professional, because I think he's always been professional throughout his career. But this disbelief, like, okay, all I'm going to do is assess this person and tell you if or not they have a mental illness. But that's the extent of my. And then later on, he came across proof.
It's amazing. A lot of people are now saying how many people that have been committed are in actuality possessed.
Well, no, and you know what? He talks about that. It's really good. By the way, I recommend it. I want to say that Marlene, it's the demonic foe. Let me see. Hold on real quick. As a matter of fact, I still have it up here. I was like, as a matter of fact, it got to, and I'm no wimp. Let me tell you that I'm not, I mean, demonic foes. Okay, that's the title of the book. I'm no wimp, but it got to the point that I was like, sometimes it would be at night and I'm here at my desk working on something. And I said, I can't be listening to this at night before I go to bed because I'm not going to sleep. So I ended up just listening to it during the daytime. I wimped out. It was that. How can I tell you, when you listen to it, it's not sensational, but it's exactly what you were describing. And also by these group of people that deal with, how do you call it? The aftermath.
Right.
Of investigations gone wrong.
Right. Oh, absolutely. That's a great,
and something that I'm going to ask you, because you see these people doing the provocation or the confrontation, and it's like, I look at that, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
I talk about that in both of my books.
You do.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Look, here's the bottom line. If ghosts are departed people the way we think they are, why wouldn't you show them respect? Would you talk that way to somebody if they're standing right in front of you? Well, why are you doing that? Why are you threatening people? Why are you provoking them? And we all know that in the reality world that we live in, there, no good comes of that. So why do you think any good is going to come of that to somebody who's passed on? In fact, I am 100% sure. If I'm sure of anything, it's that the evidence we got is because we were respectful.
Sure.
And we weren't trying to provoke.
Yeah.
Because these spirits they don't have anything to prove to you. And most of the time they are not interested in proving to you that they are there. They don't care about you.
Right. Either. And sometimes they don't even recognize, some of those that are caught in that loop of reliving, that's the wrong word, but redoing whatever they were doing.
They're not even conscious that you're there.
I'm sure people that are very methodical and they've got this routine.
Yep.
And that they'll do it for years and years and years. And so I think, in truth, some people, even after they die, they get caught like a hamster wheel kind of thing.
James von Prague once said that in his book. I believe it was his book called Ghosts. Where that he's actually seen ghosts of people sitting in the pews of church.
Yes.
Because here these people were so caught up in their routine that that was a great way to put it, during life, constantly going to church, that after death they're
Yes.
still going to church.
Yes. 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 That's why I think sometimes, contrary again, everybody thinks the investigations, it's, go at night. Yeah, it's sometimes for, if you're trying to avoid noise contamination, it's quieter. But sometimes if you get some type of supernatural agency, even we're not talking residual, but it's somebody like we described that they're doing you're going to get better evidence in the daytime because that's when they were doing whatever they were doing that they have to
Well,
do.
the only advantage to going at night is that
Right.
it's easier to get photographic anomaly at night.
Yeah.
That's it. But you're absolutely right. Ghosts are just as prevalent in the daytime as they
Yes.
are at night. In fact, our experience is the most active times has actually dusk, not when it gets completely
Yes.
dark,
Yes. Dusk.
but
I tell
just
everybody.
when that sun is on the horizon and
Mm-hmm.
it's dark but not completely dark. That's when we get most of our activity.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes you look at it even like um even I'll say this. I've been in places where it's sometimes a cemetery but rural, and exactly what you said, either early morning or dusk. And I always keep thinking of it as this is a time of day where people either were bringing in animals or the everything is changing. The land is
Okay,
changing. The daylights, the
okay.
animals are going away. Others are coming out. If there was a farm nearby or activity, this is the time of day where everybody's coming in, bringing in animals. There's like a surge of activity, and
That's a
sometimes
great point. Yeah.
and you will see that just sometimes just the vibrations that you get, the fabric of the land, as far as that's the time where things shifted around.
You
um
know, it's such a good point because a lot of people say that the part of the throughout the night, the hour that gets the most activity is 3 in the morning. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that I can't remember what it was called, but 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody used to wake up in olden times to put more wood in the fire,
yes.
and they couldn't sleep through the night. They
Right.
had to restoke the fireplace, and there are certain things they had to do in the middle of the night, and then they would
Hmm.
go back to sleep. So
Yes.
who knows?
Of
You
course,
know,
of course. Yeah, that you have to put yourself back in those times.
right?
What were you doing? Also, one time I was interviewing this gentleman, and he ended up buying in St. Louis a very old house. It was over 100 years, and he said that at the beginning, very early in the morning, he would always have the smell of coffee. Like, but
Oh,
back then, when they would grind coffee, that it would waft all the way up the stairs. It was a very old Victorian style house. And he said that was very early. He says that wouldn't fail. I think it was more residual than anything,
sure.
but he said it didn't fail. He says you would have that smell of coffee, being made from that would come from the kitchen, so strong. And of course, like it's not like nowadays. Back then, coffee was more, how can I smell? Smelly? How's that?
Yeah, now
You
everybody
know,
has a Keurig cup. You can't smell anything.
right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that and he says, and you only smelled it for a little bit right in the morning, first thing in the morning, and that's it. And you wouldn't smell it again until the next day.
That's crazy.
So,
That's
and it's
crazy.
all based on that. I'm gonna tell you that methodical thing that you get as far as what happens, and we could get into like, oh, what happens, how it gets imprinted into the fabric of the
Yeah.
place, whatever it is, um, good or bad. I've heard of people, let's say, sometimes buying houses. By the way, not necessarily old houses, just a house, and it looks all pretty and painted. And they've ended up using a room that they didn't know at one point was the sick room for somebody there, you know. And
Hmm.
people don't realize sometimes there's people that go home and they're very sick and they're very ill, and they started using this bedroom, and then they start having weird symptoms that they can't understand why.
Well, yeah. Wow.
And it's not a haunting. How's that? It's not that they're being haunted. There's no ghost
But
or
there's an
anything
energy
there.
there.
It's that this person sometimes, there's people sometimes they're ill, sometimes for months, years, sometimes even.
Yeah. Well,
And
we
go
had
ahead.
one of our episodes called "Tragedy at Rockport." It's in
Mm-hmm.
Rockport, New Jersey, and it was one of the worst train disasters in the state's history.
Okay.
And basically, what had happened was it was snowing, and it was going through an intersection. It was covered with snow and ice, and the train derailed, and the passenger cars flipped on top of the steam engine, and everybody was burned alive.
Oh, wow, it's horrible.
And we did an investigation at the site, and wouldn't you know it, we got, and you can watch the episode Tragedy at Rockport, very dark investigation. We got the residual
Mm-hmm.
sounds of people saying, "We are burning, we are burning,"
Oh, wow.
and it's not fun. But
No,
I don't believe though they're reliving that. I believe that is
right.
exactly
That
what
it
it is.
just.
Residual energy that was
Mm-hmm.
so strong, it's literally
Yes.
soaked into the countryside then.
Yes. Yes. It's there. Exactly. So much so that
This was
you'll
back,
hear it or, or smell it. Sometimes it's just
right?
smells. It's,
This
you
was
know,
back in the late 20s or early 30s when this happened. And you
yes.
could see the burnt railroad ties are still there. They're still
Wow.
there on the ground. That these things witnessed the disaster.
Okay.
And so,
Well, this is that's another thing. Let me ask you because you do investigations. And sometimes things are just that. They're just impressions or residual. It doesn't always necessarily have to be an intelligent haunting.
right.
And sometimes people think that, especially I want to say that if it's very timed, whether it's the anniversary or like that, I said like certain time of day or it's always the same exact thing. How's that?
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
we're look, this is such a fledgling field. We're really pioneers here. I mean,
hmm
people really didn't start doing this until the mid 1800s.
right.
So even if you're looking, okay, maybe it's like 150 years, but with virtually no support from the scientific community.
No.
So, I mean, what are these things? Are they the same as ghosts? Are they ghosts, like you said, stuck in a loop? That could be. The residual energy is electromagnetic, the same as a ghost is electromagnetic. So,
Right.
is it just a different form of energy? One's intelligent, one's not. We don't know. We don't know.
Right.
It's really something that we're learning as we go along. The one thing that we can say for certain is that there's something there
Sure.
because where do these voices come from? Where do the
Exactly.
EVPs come from? Why is this unit that is used to detect faulty wiring in a home reacting in the middle of the woods where there's no electricity at
There's
all?
no electricity. And there it probably might not even be for miles for all you know. It's like it's
Exactly. So there's something there. There's something there. I mean, who was speaking into my
yes.
recorder when I was leaving the cemetery telling me not to leave? It wasn't me and it wasn't my wife. Nobody else there.
Right.
I mean, where did that
Yes.
come from? It came from somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. And what you said, those sentences are so. It wasn't like, well, it was. It was basically a self-aware. How's that? That you
Yeah,
were
and
leaving.
we've learned that the frequency that most EVPs are caught on, the audio frequency, is the same frequency as a dog whistle.
Mm-hmm.
So they say that animals can, dogs can hear ghosts. That's why when they're barking at nothing, they're really barking at something. Um, we think that dogs can hear them, and
Yes.
because spirits speak on the same frequency as when you blow into a dog whistle, you can't hear a dog whistle either. But it's the same frequency that we're capturing these EVPs on.
Okay.
And that's why they say that animals can hear them. I mean, that's always been suspected, but now there's
Yes.
actually some scientific basis for it.
Right. Right. The as far as the animals reacting a certain way, and that obviously they can see or feel, or and that's the thing. Some people are they seeing something? Are they hearing something? Are they feeling something?
I think
You
both.
know. You know exactly like where how much are they? What is it that they're reacting to? Whether it's aggressively, and it's really funny because sometimes the animal gets barks and barks, and then other times they get terrified. It makes you wonder, like, what makes them
Right.
react one way versus the other?
Well,
Like, how's this? It's almost like maybe are they aware of intent, like what you said originally? What's the intent of this spirit?
yeah, I think there's an intuitive purpose to certain animals too, like cats. I tell people that are experiencing a haunting, I said, "Do you have a cat?" Invariably, they say no. I said, "You got to get a cat."
Okay.
They do keep away negative energy, and especially calicos and bow tie cats, and we have one of each. And
Hmm.
my bow tie, Pookie, if we have an investigation and we have a weird vibe, he will not leave my wife's side. He will not leave her side.
Isn't that
And I
interesting?
think there's that intuitiveness there that he's protecting her from something because, the legend has it they can keep these negative energies at bay. And I think they can. And I think they know they're there.
Yes, yes, yes. This, and one of the things I've noticed also, um, and I'm sure maybe you've heard of it, depending, where you will have people having something going on, and I'm not saying non-human, just a haunting, and they've gone sometimes to clergy or the regular parishes, and they kind of get turned away, kind of like, they're like, okay, like they're not, they're not called liars, but at the same time, they're not. But I think I've seen a trend, especially with some religions, about being a little bit more approachable about this, like what you're saying, like admitting that this does exist.
Hmm.
Because before, I
Well,
think it was more like, let's not
well,
talk about
you
that.
know, I'm Roman Catholic, and I got to tell you
Hmm.
something right now. Probably the most accepting religion in Christianity right now is the Roman Catholics because they've
Yes,
always
it is.
believed ghosts exist. They've
Yes.
always believed it.
Yeah.
And more recently, in the Vatican, they've actually lifted the moratorium on paranormal investigation as
Hmm.
long as it's done within certain parameters.
Right.
Um, but yeah, for sure, for sure. I have a
Yes.
lot
Yes.
of friends who are Catholic priests, and I've not had one of them tell me not to do it. As a matter of fact, they love looking at my evidence
Right.
because it
Exactly.
just
There's more
reaffirms.
that thing where, um how can I say that before, it was like almost like an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at, there's a lot of mysticism in the Catholic Church too,
Yes, there
um,
is.
and the saints throughout the centuries, they were all psychic mediums. No one's going to tell
Yes.
them
When
different
you
because they
when you
could
when you read
communicate.
their life story, or there's stuff that happens to them that you're like, wow,
They
you
had
know.
gifts, no
Well,
doubt.
and in some cases though, it's almost like, thank God, either you were, sometimes they were priests or nuns, because otherwise you might have been, you might have gotten in trouble.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh
You're
yeah.
seeing this, and you're channeling or whatever it is that
Oh,
you're doing.
please.
And if it wasn't that you belong to a holy order, I don't know.
Well, if you were a Protestant in King James's time, you did you you kept that quiet.
Well, you know what? And it's really funny because, everybody, like you said, before, everything was Catholic, and then, obviously, when Henry VIII, and then the schism, Protestantism, and blah blah
Sure.
blah blah. Which, by the way, there were it was something I was researching about when they did the witch, where they were burning so many people in Europe for being witches, right?
The burning times, yes.
The burning times. They were saying that this really didn't happen during medieval times. You did not see that happen.
Nope.
In other words, this started happening after the schism, and it
That's
was
right.
really unusual because they said it was almost like these different they're all Christians, obviously, but they were all vying for followings,
Yes.
and having this obviously very public thing where you're accusing and burning witches, and it was because it was a public thing. It's almost like, we can protect you, we can take care of you, we're chasing the devil out, and look, we have found the devil's servants, and we're gonna burn them to stake, so that people would be like, if you know am I going to follow the Catholics? Well, even though they said that usually the Inquisition was more after heretics versus the witches, but it was almost like all these public displays of the burning times. What was really driving it in some cases was visibility, as we know how to combat the devil, we can protect you, kind of deal.
Well, I hate to say this, and I know we're getting into the weeds here, but
Go
hey,
ahead.
this is where the conversation's going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's happening today. And
Yeah.
now they're not burning people, they're not killing people, thank
Right.
God, but they are ostracizing people.
Sure.
They are polarizing groups
Yes.
because I mean, I get people, man, I get it. Boy, do I get it. I'm like, oh, what you're doing is the devil, and every
Yes, I've
ghost
heard
that
of that.
you're talking to is really a demon in disguise, even though not one place in scripture says that ghosts are demons. Not one. Not one.
Right,
It's not in
right.
there at all. But yet they are all convinced. And now this
Yes.
goes back to the 1500s, by the way, this belief
Mm-hmm.
that ghosts are demons. And they go to the mat with that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I even said recently to a person, burn the witch, right? And they're like, no, no, but maybe shine the spotlight. I said, well, you know what they call a spotlight? They call it a torch. So I said, it's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
I said,
Yes.
so it's what you're doing is the same thing. You're just not as violent about it. And I'll give you
Right.
kudos for that.
Exactly.
I says, but what you're doing is not good either. Because,
Exactly.
first of all, what you're saying is false. You really don't have any basis for it other than what you
Mm-hmm.
believe. And you're separating people, you're ostracizing people. And that's
Right.
why I see some people of the cloth getting involved and saying,
Well, see, and this is the thing. The way I look at it is, if you want to believe that, and you want to think, and you think that this, okay, fine.
yeah,
Well, that's fine. Stay away from paranormal investigations.
exactly.
And in your mind, okay, everything is demonic. Okay, that's fine. I
Right,
think the problem comes in where you start, like you say, condemning others, like,
right.
you're wrong and blah, 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 blah. And it goes, downhill from there. I think that's where the problem comes in, where there's like this, there's no wiggle room for like, hey,
No
you
wiggle
wait,
room, none.
and that's the problem. And you're right. Some of it comes back to, well, obviously it's different because, how can I say it? It's almost like, we want to prove, how's this? I think sometimes, unfortunately, there's people that will, if they've been non-religious, how's this? And they have a conversion or something, they tend to go with a movement or a church that's very in your face, like very like, you
Yes.
know, we're going to protect you because of all this, And let's face it, Catholics, we're kind of milk toasty about that. You know what I'm saying? We
We don't
are.
proselytize. We don't.
Right, exactly.
We don't. No.
And
It's like either you're a Catholic or you're not.
right, yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, well, yeah. Well, these are the rules, and
Right.
and I think some people, like, they either, God knows, for a lot of different reasons, unless it's very in your face and this, and when you're gonna get saved, very dramatic. How's that? I'll use that word.
Right.
They kind of don't think that there's any validity to it, to that
Right.
belief system. And at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. Sometimes it's like, hey, we need followers,
Right.
call it what you will,
But it's the
or
truth.
participants or whatever.
We
And
need.
this make
Okay. This probably but they need people putting money in their collection plate. They
yes.
can't run these churches with no people.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And that's
Exactly.
the bottom
That
line.
that 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 uh let me tell you something. That's the truth of the matter.
It is.
They get an electric bill just like everybody
That's
else.
right. That's right.
You get a lot of exemptions if you're a church, but still there's other things that you can't get away from.
You can't get away from electric, heating, light, yeah, all that stuff, maintenance.
All that stuff, all that stuff. But yeah, the other day, like I said, when I was reading that, I said, you know what? I never looked at the catalyst, let's say, for, and that's horrible to think of it that way, of the burning times of all these thousands of people getting burned, as it being behind the scenes, like we got to make a public spectacle, like, hey, see, we're the ones, we got the devil on the run, so you got to stay with us, kind of deal. So, and
Yeah.
isn't that a neat magic trick? I'm only kidding, but
Yeah.
which, by the way, I want to real quick. It was when you say that thing about magic, and one time I was seeing that one of those docu-series, I think it was on Discovery, one of these places, where they were looking at these really ancient civilizations, at these temples that they would have. They would build these huge temples and these statues and everything. And they have, for example, these statues where the smoke would come out of the nostrils, and everything was very much the appearance, that magic, how's this,
Right.
that could be made or manufactured, so that the masses would go, oh, the statue, smoke's pouring out of the nostrils, that kind of thing, that illusion. How's that?
Yeah,
So
they would do that. There's there's stories of magicians throughout history,
Yes,
that were tricksters, but they were used by the royal courts
sure.
to show the power of the gods, even though it wasn't the power of the gods. But yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
goes
it's just
back to ancient
um,
Egyptian times. I mean, this
well,
Bobby,
yeah, they when you look at it, all these because they used to some of these temples that they would make were huge. Where they you could tell a lot of manpower and money was put into them
absolutely.
again for shock and awe purposes. But let me ask you: have you ever had another magician that knows that you're into paranormal come to you and go, Bobby, I got to talk to you about something. This happened to me, but like on the low, down low, like I don't
Um,
want nobody to know about this.
not a magician. I had one person who claimed to be a magician who said, magicians don't believe in this stuff, and I'm like, you speak for all magicians? I mean,
Right,
all a magician is a person schooled in the art of misdirection. I mean, we come in all shapes and sizes,
right, uh huh,
but they like to think that some of them like to they want to be the James Randi, they want to be the Houdini,
right,
they want to be that debunker and be the hero of
sure,
the magical community. But the bottom line is, magicians are entertainers, and sometimes I think when they try to debunk the supernatural, it's their way of getting political, so to speak.
yeah.
So I think they should stick to entertainment, which is really their forte.
Right, I know. And the reason why I asked that is like it's almost like, almost like what you said that magicians are known for like being anti-supernatural. It's
Right.
like, and some of them having some experience. And I'm thinking, I wonder if anybody, like okay, between you and me, don't tell anybody. But I had this experience.
I'll be
But
honest with you. Most of them are more fascinated than anything else.
yeah,
And
that's what I thought.
what they really find interesting is my conviction. Because they say, "Do you really believe in ghosts?" And I tell them, I said, after doing this for 12 years, and if you look at my streaming channels, I have over 130 videos. I said, I passed the point of belief a long time
Yeah,
ago. I
exactly.
mean, at what point, what piece of evidence are you going to get that's going to say, well, that's it? Well, I've had
Right.
that again and again and again and
Hmm.
again. So don't ask me if I believe. I mean, I know. If you don't believe, it's because you haven't even had one experience. I've
Right.
had dozens. So for
Right.
me, it's commonplace. For you, it would be miraculous. It's different point of view. We're looking at it through different lenses.
Exactly. And that, yeah, I totally agree. Okay, Bobby, thank you so much. Let me ask you for my podcast listeners, what is the best way that they can find you?
Oh, easy. Everybody see that right there?
Yes.
Ghosthunter.ws.
Okay.
That's my link tree. And
Ghosthunter.ws. Okay.
ghosthunter.ws, which stands for web series, but it's now links to my link tree, and it has both books where you can get them, which is Barnes and Noble,
Okay.
and the Barnes and Noble links for my books. It
Okay.
also has a link to my YouTube channel, my Vimeo channel, my Rumble channel, and my Daily Motion channel. They all have the
Okay.
same videos. It's just whatever you want to watch them on.
Right. However, whatever platform they want to find it at.
Right.
How
Vimeo is the
often are
highest
you putting
quality.
out the series? Do you do it on a specific schedule or it's just when you release something?
It's pretty much just when I release something, but I will tell you this: if they go there now, there's so
Okay.
much content that
All right.
it'll keep them busy for. I mean, you could binge on it for days, and that's not even
Okay.
an exaggeration. There's so much
Okay.
content right now.
Do you have any plans, any projects coming up or any books?
Well, I did write these two books. I'm actually working on a book for magicians. Look at that. And the reason
Okay.
is, like you mentioned, the International Conservatory of Magic. That's now, we just
Oh
retired
my
that.
God, yes, I forgot to ask you about that.
That's okay because we retired it after 20 years. And
Okay.
but what I did is I took all of the material, which is
Uh-huh.
over 2,000 pages, and
Okay.
we're going to be publishing the best of in a volume. And I'm working on that
Okay.
now. But if anybody wants to meet us, we're going
Okay.
to our next event's the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash in July, and that's
Okay.
a
Anniversary of the Gettysburg. Okay.
yes,
Battle.
it's a very big Paracon.
Yes.
We were there last year. We're going to be there again this year signing books, and I'm also going to be speaking. I'm
Okay.
doing a lecture called "Children in the Paranormal" because we got attacked a lot for bringing our kids on investigations. So I'm actually going to
Oh my God. I bet that. Yes. I
yeah,
hadn't thought of that angle, but yeah, did you got what? You got the stink eye? Like, what are you doing with your kids here? How
yeah,
could you?
exactly. So, I mean, I write about it in Family Spirits too, but we're going to do a lecture on it at the bash. So
Okay.
that's the next thing coming up.
Okay. Fantastic. Again, Bobby, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. You got to come back. We got to talk some more
Oh
because I
yeah,
love your
you're right.
stories.
We could definitely talk all night. You
Oh
know that.
yeah, absolutely. I like, and I tell everybody, you know what? As far as paranormal investigations, or even if you're just a legend tripper, yeah, you could read all the books, you could look at all the shows. There's nothing like field experience, like going out there,
Right.
you know, and having either a really interesting time or going, oh my God, I'm ready
Well,
to go to sleep. Thanks.
I just want to tell you, you know, if you go to ghosthunter.ws and you watch the web series, I
Uh-huh.
will guarantee you, we fake nothing.
Right.
Anything you see on any of those shows, and every show has something, or we wouldn't have really released it. Some are better than others, but some will blow your mind. Like the Hidden Grave of Thomas Sprout, which has the full body apparition. But
Right.
everything you see is real, is genuine. Nothing was faked. So if you want real paranormal evidence, really, you need to check us out, and it's free. So you don't have to. We're not behind
Okay.
a
That's
paywall or
fantastic.
anything like that.
That is fantastic.
Yep.
I think it's so refreshing. Yeah. Believe it or not, it's like real. That's what real ghost hunting is. I know there's
Right.
people going out there. Yeah, Marlene. It's like, hey, like you said, this was you, your wife, your kids. It's not you don't have a production crew
Nope.
running around doing all the work behind the scenes. This is what real paranormal research is,
Exactly.
you know, when you're the only ones there.
That's right.
Again, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bobby. Take care. It was been wonderful.
Thank you, Marlene.
Bye-bye. Wow, it has been great to talk to him because he, you know what? He's done the work. He's done the work. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's done the work. You know, I'm sure, maybe he hasn't without knowing 100%, but I'm sure maybe that they visited some places where it was like, boy, no pun intended, this is dead as a doornail. Nothing's happening here. Nothing. Just because it's a cemetery, everybody thinks, oh, because it's a cemetery, something's going to happen. You'd be surprised. Sometimes nothing does happen, like nothing, like no EVP, no nothing, nothing, for a lot of different reasons. And I'm sure that maybe they've had those situations, and after a while, they pack up their stuff and they're like, well, not. And yeah, I like it, and I agree with him. Sometimes you do capture stuff after the fact. After you look at things, you will hear things that you're like, "Whoa, what was that?" And when you were there, you're thinking nothing happened. But there's other times that legitimately nothing happened before, during, and after. And then you get the flip side of it. And that's why I mentioned to people what we were talking about as far as cemeteries. Besides the obvious of that, you could get in trouble for trespassing, or I've heard of people running into people doing stuff like, um, how can I tell you, invoking things, doing spell work, because, especially if it's one of these cemeteries where you're there after midnight, let's say you're like, oh, we're going to do an all-nighter at the cemetery, or you arrive late. I've heard of groups that have basically found um, people doing spell work there, or dark rituals, especially, of course, if the cemetery is like kind of hidden away or rural or old and forgotten, like, or it's, especially, of course, if it's, when I say rural, I mean, or in some area where there's nobody living out there, you know, there's no neighbors that are going to call police and say, hey, there's people running around inside the neighborhood. I mean, they're specifically chosen because of that. And I've heard of people having weird run-ins or going, oh, uh, at these places. And that's one of the things that, how can I say, despite what everybody thinks of, oh, a haunting or something evil, sometimes what you have to look out for is the living person, or circumstances where you're like, this is not a safe place to be. This is not a safe place to be. I've heard of places, especially older cemeteries, where the part of town that these older cemeteries are the old part of town. They've either, if there was a residential neighborhood that the houses are decrepit. People have moved away. I've heard even of some of these cemeteries being basically the area around it is like a older factory area. Sometimes even these factories are dead. They're like, it's very, and you have to be really careful going out to some of these places as far as criminal activity. In other words, yeah, you could go out there in the daytime and you'd be okay, but going out there at nighttime, it's like you're risking going out there, something happening to you. Yeah, those are all the things that you need to consider. Those are the realities of doing this type of work. Uh, because I have a video. I got locked into I got locked into Daytona. Oh, boy, I got locked into Daytona Cemetery, one of the oldest cemeteries in Daytona Beach, and I was I raced in there. They closed the gates at 5 p.m., but it was broad daylight, by the way. And I raced in there and I said, you know what? I'll just get a couple of clips. I'll just film a little bit. Well, it turns out that the person that they would leave to lock up was this guy that he wasn't doing it at 5. Because the truth is, the cemetery was empty. It's really funny because the cemetery is right across the street from bars, from saloons and stuff. It's not like it's, but there was nobody in there. And you could see it through the bars. And all of a sudden I walked around, and when I'm going out the other gate, the gate is locked. I race over to the other gate. It's locked. I was locked in there. And I was like, holy crap. And I left my husband. He's sitting in the car, you know, not paying attention, of course. And basically, I got saved. The cavalry was people at the saloon came over and brought a ladder and got me out. I had to jump over the fence because they couldn't find him. It was like one of these people. He's the one that has the key, and he left. And I'm not sure people even knew. As a matter of fact, that was one of the problems that the cemetery had. That it's a very old cemetery, and it really wasn't being well kept or well maintained. And they had given somebody the key that I guess his job was like open up the gates at this time, close the gates at this time. And he wasn't doing it exactly at 5 o'clock, maybe quarter of, and except that one day that Marlene was in there. Yeah. And I have a video on YouTube about me getting rescued, by thank God these guys are hanging out at the saloon having a beer. And I was like, this is going to be very embarrassing for me to call the police and say, I'm stuck in the cemetery. Yeah. So that can happen. That can happen, by the way. That can happen in places. And good luck sometimes I'm figuring out. In other words, there's not always, especially if it's a place that's a little bit more, there's no gate, there's no caretaker or anything like that. That you could knock and say, hey, can you open up? I got stuck in there. Yeah. That happened to me in Miami also. But I was with a friend and we were leaving again. The caretaker, the person that's in charge, I believe they were closing the gates at 5 or 6. I can't remember, but we were leaving. It was like 5 minutes. We were like, we timed it. We're like, okay, we'll be. And these people, and again, it's not even a weekend. It was a weekday. It was a very older cemetery in Miami, but it was in the middle of the city. And we're like, okay, 5 minutes. Let's get out of here. We drive up and the gate is closed. And we're like, oh my God. I looked at my friend and she looked at me like, who do you call? Who do you call besides the cops? And there was this little house at the entrance. And we noticed that the wall unit was still running. The AC was still running. And I said, she goes, wait a minute, I'll be right back. She says she knocked on the window. She looked, and he says the guy jumped like 3 feet out of his chair. And she knocked on the window. And she's like telling him, come out. And she's like, no, we were leaving. And he was like, you can tell by the look on his face. He was kind of like, okay, all right. No, he was like, he opened up the gate and we left, but you could tell. Yeah, he lost a few years of life when she knocked on that window. But yeah, that can happen. That's another thing. When you go hunting and you're in a gated cemetery, that they do close the gates. And these people, sometimes they leave. They got a key and they leave. And sometimes the only way you're going to get out of there is you call the cops. Yeah, that kind of deal. So yeah, adventures in graveyards. Maybe we should do a show on that. like real adventures in the graveyard. And again, and getting to what he said about, and I know there's a lot of people that don't do that, that would never either, not because they're afraid of anything, but just out of respect, that if there's anything that's been left on any of these graves, they would never take it because it's like, that's a sign of disrespect, whatever. Not because they're, but the thing when he showed the teddy bear and stuff like that, you'd be surprised. Stuff gets left at cemeteries that are not really, how's this, well-intentioned memorials, let's see, for a certain grave. Sometimes you see that with children's graves where people leave like little ceramic, toys or stuff like that. Sometimes you'd be surprised what is, how's this, how some object, some innocent looking object, how's that, whether it's a statue or a stuffed bear, that you're thinking, well, it doesn't look weird. It does. I don't even get a bad. Leave it there. Just don't ever take anything. Don't ever take anything. I mean, let's not even go into the vandalizing part, but don't ever take anything or move stuff around or anything like that in a cemetery for obvious reasons. Because you just never know. You could have the most innocent looking item, and like he said, you could have an attachment to it. The last thing you want is to have that kind of problem just because you're traipsing around in a graveyard. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's there. Besides the obvious is that you're in a final resting of dead people. There's other stuff that goes on at graveyards, darker stuff, that you might have no idea. Like I said, ceremonies, rituals that are carried on, stuff that's left behind there on purpose, by the way. Things of this nature that you could just be walking around. I would say even and here I'm not even talking about going into a cemetery or graveyard to do a paranormal investigation. I'm talking about you just walking around, maybe taking pictures, maybe if they've got older graves, back then where people were more ornate with the obelisks and all the crying angel, nice statuary. You still have to be careful, even if that's all you're doing, about what's there. Really, seriously. 9 times out of 10, there isn't anything they have to worry about for that one time. Better to just, just leave it alone. And of course, do your prayers of protection. It doesn't hurt, on the contrary. Anyway, guys, it has been absolutely wonderful to share this time with you. Please come back every week. I have a lot of fantastic guests coming on. Some really good guests coming on. New ones like Bobby and some people that haven't been here for a couple of years, but they've been writing books, off doing other adventures, and we're bringing them back. Again, go to mppellicer.com or Miami Ghost Chronicles for links to either the newsletter, to shows, to podcasts, to anything, whatever's going on, articles. And again, if you have any ideas for guests, subject matter, whatever the case might be, you can send me an email at marlene@miamighostchronicles.com, and I will try my best to get you what you want. So till the next time, take care.